Yay, we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're really on this channel tonight. It's not like
really
last
are.
week where I
Really
sent
confused.
you scripts running all over the place, all over the internet. So welcome and thanks for being here. And Debbie, do you want to introduce your little guest that you have with you today?
Yes, this is Elowen, and some of you already know her, but those of you who don't, this is Elowen. She's my granddaughter, and she's actually been on shows with me reading, and I happen to be at her house. This is her room. This is where we're all set up, and so she wanted to be a part of Ladies' Night tonight. So
Nice.
here we are.
Well, good. Well, welcome. Hi, Andrea. So, Debbie, you're waiting for the baby.
Right,
Clearly.
the baby's going to be here any
On
like
baby watch.
like we're on baby watch, literally.
How exciting. And Andrea, you have bangs now.
I cut my bangs. Yeah, so it's very exciting.
Very, very cute and very, very trendy. Their bangs are all the rage right now. Yeah.
Is it really the bangs?
I think so, yeah.
I don't know if I can do
layers and bangs and all that stuff. So good. Well, welcome, ladies. And we have some very I think interesting subjects and ladies to cover tonight. So I think in the lineup, I believe
I'm
Andrea, right? Andrea's first.
I think I snuck in. I think I snuck in just to have
you
All
did?
right.
Okay. All right. Wow.
All right.
One second letter.
Andrea. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
One letter. By one letter.
By one letter.
Okay.
I read a quote, when we search and we look for people, and I read a quote that this woman said, and I was like, oh, yes, we must talk to her. So my choice tonight is Abigail Adams. And she was I love this, she was the first second lady and the second first lady.
What? Can you say that again for the dyslexic people?
So she married John Adams. And when he became vice president, she was the second first lady. And then he became president and she became the first lady.
Got it.
So that was fun play on words.
It was.
So she was married to John Adams, as well as she gave birth, and her son was John Quincy Adams, another president. So her and Barbara Bush are the only two women to have been married to one president and mother of another.
Oh, very interesting.
That is very interesting.
Yes. And she's considered a very close advisor to her husband at the time, which I really like that part of their story. Very respectful. He sought her advice on many, many topics. And it's very well documented. She's one of the most documented first ladies because they wrote tons of letters back and forth to each other. And they're all kept. There's thousands of letters between her and her husband. Yeah. Let's see. He generally sought her advice on every matter, not just one or two things, everything. And history, a survey has listed her to be one of the most highly regarded first ladies in history.
Oh, wow.
So she was born in 1744 of reasonable parents and lineage. And she didn't receive formal schooling as a child. She was quite ill all the time, which they say is a factor from that. But later on, she said it was also because she was a female and females weren't given the opportunity to get an education. So, which we know, and she has stated. And although she didn't receive a formal education, her mother did teach her and her sisters to read, write, and cipher. And they had the opportunity to use their father, uncle, and grandfather's large library. So the girls studied English and French and whatever they could get their hands on. They were self-taught. So I really respect that.
Wow.
Right? And she met John Adams when she was 15 years old, and they got married 5 years later. And this seems like it was a very good marriage, a good pairing, and the fact that he was very respectful of her and her opinion. They had 6 children in total, and one did become a president. And before they got married, I love this. Her mom didn't like John Adams. She thought he was too low class. He was just a country lawyer, right?
Mhm.
And then finally she said, okay, you can marry him. And off they went on their one horse, little wagon to their little shack home to live in. And I think her mother was just like, oh, he's just not good enough. And you just never know. He becomes president, right?
Wow.
I love that. So she was quite a caring woman as well. There were lots of people in her life who had some struggles, especially with alcoholism, her brother, her brother-in-law, even one of her own sons. And she brought their children to the White House to live with them because, it was a nice home. So she was very caring and open. She took care of the people in her life. I like that about her too. So it's her stance on social situations that really got me like, we gotta talk to this woman. So we have to remember this is early 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
And she was one of the forefront people who believe slavery was evil and a threat to the American democratic experiment. And she wrote a letter stating this, that she couldn't believe other people had such a passion for liberty and claim that they did, since they deprived their fellow creatures of freedom. So really putting people up to task. Like, how can you say you believe in these things and then you hold people back? That was pretty bold, and especially for her position to be saying those things. And she, there was a young Black youth that she invited to her home to teach him how to write. And then she placed him in a local school, evening school. And her neighbors would object to her having this boy come to her house. And she responded with, he's free, and he has much as any of the young men around us, needs and should have, right? What they need. And why is he being denied instruction? How is he to be qualified to procure a livelihood? Have I not thought it any disgrace to myself to take him in? I have not thought it of any disgrace to take him into my parlor and teach him to both read and write. So really outspoken. This was in 1791, like early. So she's fighting these things. I really like that. And her stance on women's rights is what really got me. Whoa. Okay. She wrote a lot about the troubles and concerns she had as an 18th century woman. She was an advocate of married women's property rights, right? So a lot of women would get married at the time and wouldn't have anything. It was all the husbands or the oldest sons, right? So advocating for women to have property rights and more opportunities for women, particularly in the field of education. Women, she believed, should not submit to laws made out of their own interests. So why would women submit to laws that aren't made for them? Nor should they be content with the simple role of being companions to their husbands. They should educate themselves and thus be recognized for their intellectual capabilities, so they could guide and influence the lives of their children and others. She's known for her March 1776 letter to her husband and the Continental Congress, requesting that they remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could.
Mm.
if particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to form a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation. Oh,
Jeez.
Wow. Hello.
and be more favorable to them than your ancestors. So she's really, really highlighting the trials and tribulations of women and asking Congress and her husband to pay attention to that and be better. I just thought that part of that letter was just shocking and exciting.
Yes.
And the fact that you're creating laws that have nothing to do with us, so why would we listen to them?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
I just thought this was shocking. It's shocking that it's very exciting that she would do this. I thought, we got to talk to her. So she passed away in 1818 of, I believe it was typhoid. And her husband passed away 8 years after her. And as you know, her son went on to become president as well. So she's a very interesting lady in history. I didn't know much about her, and I read that quote and I was like, oh yes. Oh yes, Abigail, bring it on. So again, outspoken and not afraid to say anything about her views on slavery and that it was pure evil and women's rights. So I thought,
she said she had an impact on her son. On his, or she tried to have an impact on her son, but I feel like she's highlighting him like I raised him right. But when you were talking about it, she's highlighting him like I that truth. She spoke truth to him, and equality, more equality speak to him.
Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands.
Yes. I mean.
And I got to tell you, we're talking 200 years ago.
Yeah.
200 years ago, same song.
Right.
Same.
There is a similarity in her energy, at least for me, with Nancy Pelosi. A real like strength and conviction, and like wanting real equality for everybody, but also this like so this real strength, this a lot of strength, but also this kind of there's kind of a refined, kind of gentle quality to her as well that I think was very disarming to people. I think that's what I feel like is the commonality, because there's something about them that's very similar. And I think that she would say, you're right, Andrea, she would say these things or write these things that were like, oh my gosh. But when you talk to her, she had a way of speaking and being that was very disarming. I feel like she had a really refined, kind of dignified quality about her that disarmed people. And also her dedication to her family as well. Yes. There's a similarities between these ladies. The other weird thing that I don't know if you might be able to shed some light on, I don't know why she kept coming up, but when I was kind of meditating on her before this was when when I first saw that this was who you were going to be choosing, Betsy Ross kept coming up. And I don't know why. I don't know if they have but I just felt like there was a real love and mutual respect between these two ladies. And I heard Betsy Ross say about her, I love this lady. So there's something.
I think you're right. It was her approach. She was saying some pretty strong things, and it was her approach that got people to listen. I think, that letter she wrote to Congress, I think is beautiful. It's so, in just 3 sentences or whatever it is, it's so
Right.
powerful. Like, be kinder than your ancestors. So perhaps not directly scolding them, but highlighting, we know how history has been towards women, and don't be like that.
So,
No.
so Abigail Adams passed away in 1817,
I think it was 1818,
18 around then.
around
So
then, yeah.
they would have been alive at the same time.
Okay.
Betsy Ross was older, but well, or not, maybe not older. But so Betsy Ross passed away in 1836. So I
Okay.
guess maybe not
Okay,
older.
they were
So they would have been
contemporaries.
contemporaries.
Yeah.
For some reason, I think of Betsy Ross as being earlier, but yeah, that then it makes sense that she would just pop in and just say, "I love this lady." So yeah, it really interesting because I was just like that. Yeah, I don't know anything about. Well,
That's cool.
I don't know a lot about Abigail, but I don't know a lot about Betsy Ross except the flag. The flag and Betsy Ross. That's all I
Maybe
know.
she'll be next.
Um,
We'll look at her next.
Maybe she'll be next. Exactly, because she popped right in, and I thought that's interesting. So I'll have to ask Andrea about that. But yeah.
And she's also one of the founders of America. She was right there at the beginning, right?
Right.
Oh, and her birthday was 11/22. Wow.
11/22, yes.
That's some numbers right there.
1744, so there's a double 4 as
Oh,
well.
there you go. You have
11
doubles.
Yeah,
Wow.
22, 11, 44.
44.
Wow.
Whoa. Go Abigail.
And I wonder what she has to say. Maybe we can tap into it, that two things she was fighting for back then, 200 years ago at the beginning of America, women's rights and equal rights. What does she have to think about what's going on today in the climate? 200, is it 200 plus years?
Mm-hmm.
She's quoting what you said, Andrea. But she's taking out the word husbands and she's just saying men.
Men, yeah. Time to update that just a little bit.
A little bit, she says, but she's quoting that. We've given too much power to them, and they exactly what she kind of predicted was going to happen has happened, or even more, more so, or whatever. Okay.
Yes, Connie, America was. You're right.
You know what I really like about this picture of here in the middle with her and her husband is how intimate it is.
Yes.
And
I get the sense they were quite close, like sincerely close.
Yeah, I think that's sweet.
And I just think, isn't that funny? Her mom didn't like him. He's not good enough. And he's president. You just never know.
And he is my cousin, by the way, John Adams.
Oh, look at you.
Oh.
Yes.
My goodness.
We're on the not good enough side. The country bumpkin side. That's us. But yeah, my sister's really, really into genealogy, and she said he's our cousin. So which doesn't help me at all right now. just tapping in, like, okay.
We got divinity card upside down. I think that can explain a lot to what's happening. Needing that divine intervention, needing love and harmony. That's what we need. And it's not just in the States, obviously, it's everywhere. But I just felt like we've lost our way, is sort of the words I'm getting. Like, how has it come to this? Are people praying enough? And praying you can take in any way you want to take. Asking, cleansing. These are just words I'm getting. Cleansing.
cleansing. Sue Ellen says she's related to him as well. Kim.
Oh, that we're related to each other in some way.
And I love
You have a relative.
that he really respected her opinion as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty progressive, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And she must
and
have.
let it be known as
Yes.
well, right? I mean, so many times, how many times have we seen women not get credit for
Yes.
being, that whatever that guidance and not getting credit for it.
She's saying the difference between then and now is that then literally people didn't know. They weren't awakened. They weren't enlightened. It was as the times, this is the time, this is how it's always been. Why, or they didn't have any other construct. And so she was bringing truth to the construct of the time. But now people know they're being racist. People know they're being judgmental, or not allowing women equality, or whatever the story is going, that's against equality. They know they're doing that. So she says that's the difference. There they just thought, this is how it is. You know what I mean? They weren't quite into the reality of knowing that women weren't they were just in that construct of women are the lesser being, and then all the other things as far as the freeing, the equality for Black people as well, the freeing of the slaves and all that. It was a different time because it was at the beginning of opening up people's eyes and understanding. We're way here. We're 200 years later or whatever, and we know right and wrong, and that and like that makes your enemy harder. The enemy of this harder to. So she says she feels like it's harder now to bring truth and awakening to people, or continue to push that when they already know the truth. They're just choosing not to follow it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that she says that's a huge difference between
Absolutely
now
and that's a really strong point you made, that if you do those things now, you are really being rotten, because it's everywhere that we don't want race and we don't want
right. We
sexism.
know better.
If you are still acting in that way, that's bad. You're really being extra rotten, like you said.
Yeah, it's extra. Yeah,
extra rotten.
That she's also bringing up the point that either she's saying that we can't take our eye off the ball, or we took our eye off the ball. Something about that when it comes to women and women's rights, and
we took our eye off the ball.
Yeah, we took our eye off the ball. That it has to be it can't not be a focus until it's completely here and done. And
once it's here, it's too late, because it's been yeah. Oh wow, that's a really good point.
Melody asks, what advice does she have for us as women? So I threw a card on that, and it's kind of what you were just hitting on, Kim. It's time to go, and we see a woman running into the cloudy distance and into something new. And it's time to go. As women, it's time to go. It's time to get up. It's time to move on. And I also heard it's time to deconstruct what it means to be a woman. And all those old things that have been put on us, like you have to get married, you have to have a kid, you have to, or you can't do this, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
It's time to deconstruct that. And
even though the Republican Party is trying to say that, remember, women
Women
be
can't
married.
vote unless they're married or something
Correct.
ridiculous.
Yep. They need to be married.
So time to just run and go for it. You may not know what it is in front of you, but keep pushing, keep moving into that direction. And when you were saying earlier about we took our eye off the prize or off the ball,
Well,
we also we thought at the time maybe that what we got was enough, or it's not enough. Like you were saying, it's not enough until it's completely gone, right?
Right.
So that one or two tidal waves, no, not a wave of movement wasn't enough, but we're also not overly aggressive and pushy, right? As a species, as a whatever part of the whatever species. But we do need to keep pushing it. It's not okay yet, right? Just because we got to vote, or just because Roe versus Wade in the 70s, or just, you know what I mean? We just have to keep pushing.
Yeah. I feel a strength from her, but I also feel grief. It's a combination, strength, grief. She's like, she wants, use your grief. She's saying with this, use your grief or use your anger, use that energy to continue to speak truth, use your voices, continue. And we get this message all the time, but that's what she's saying, and she's backing that up. She's saying, empower yourself with that grief. She's like, it's a power horse in you, ladies. She said, use that energy towards continue to use your voice, and don't be silent. She says, don't be silent. Don't be in the shadows and don't be silent. Because if you step in the shadows and you think that's going to work, and you're silent, and you think that that's going to work and just allow it to play out, it'll play out as it should. She said, don't do that. She said, be a voice, be loud.
Right.
And if you see it happening, be that voice. It doesn't have to happen to you. It might be happening to someone you work with.
Yeah.
Right? You can work, or it could be happening behind closed doors, and you're in a conversation and someone says something completely outrageous. Say something.
Right.
Like, that talk's not okay.
Yeah.
Well, and Elizabeth Ferrone makes a really good point that a lot of women didn't recognize the work of that the feminists did in the 1960s and 70s, and actually rejected feminism with no understanding what feminists that they want abortion rights and created laws against marital rape, all the kind of things they did. And they took it in the, I guess it was the late 80s, early 90s, with like phrases like feminazi and things like that, where it made it almost like a negative, that to be a strong woman, that made you masculine somehow, and that wasn't good. That was,
a derogatory term.
Right. They made it into something really, really negative because it was a threat.
Yeah.
That's why. And we know now, after going through Ladies' Night over and over and over again, we see how they do that, right? We see how they twist that to make it seem like, oh, it's really bad that you're doing that, or it's not very feminine that you're doing that, or it's not ladylike. I mean, how many times in history do we see that over and over and over again, trying to put women back in their place and, have them not be a threat, or to, stay in the corner or whatever. And yeah, that's exactly right.
Not understanding that was created. Oh,
yes.
You are too dainty. You need to be wearing skirts and dresses, and you can't wear. You're too dainty.
Why are we?
It's created.
Right. That's their narrative.
Yes.
Right.
So again, deconstructing what it means to be female, to be a woman, to be feminine. What does that really mean?
Oh my gosh, Andrea, I am loving that.
I know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
It can mean whatever you want it to mean, right?
Right.
We're going to redefine what it is.
Yes.
A woman. Email.
Yay! Yes.
Yay. Well, thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Abigail
Thank
Adams,
you,
and
Abby.
Yes,
yeah,
Abigail, thank you.
amazing. And great, yeah, such
And a
prescient
great
reminders
energy.
for sure. For sure. So Debbie.
Okay, now I'm second. Okay.
Yay. And you've
All
had to see
right.
your
So
sunset now.
it is.
What
It's
is
so
still a
beautiful.
beautiful view. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
it's so
So
pretty,
beautiful.
so pretty.
It's like lots of snow on the ground, and it's beautiful.
It really
Anyways,
is pretty.
okay. So I wanted to talk to Agnes Sampson. Last time we were together, we did the witch trials, and
Mhm.
so Agnes is from the UK, and the witch trials from there. Now, Agnes got caught up in a okay, so she was from the 1500s. She passed away in 1591. And okay, she was a widow with. Okay, so let me just kind of start with her. I don't have a birthday of her, but she died in. We know that she died in January in 1591. Okay, and she lived at Nether Keith, a part of Keith. It was Lothian. She lived in Scotland. Okay.
Right.
She was considered to have healing powers and acted as a midwife. The indictment against her indicated that, so at the time of all this taking place, she was a widow and she had children. Widow is someone whose husband has passed and they are left with their children. In the spring of 1590, a bunch of stuff started happening in regards, and you can see there's a picture of a storm on the right side there, and a big storm hit up, and I guess people were killed in this storm on the ocean and on ships and stuff, and a bunch of women were put on trial because they felt like the women caused the storm. I love the power that they gave us.
Right?
I love that they thought that we were so powerful to have created such a storm. So the story of the arrest and trial and the confessions of Agnes. So what happens is Agnes was arrested in um, but they were tortured, and she confessed because, of course,
After
She's
torture.
tortured. Yeah.
and so and then they shaved her body to reveal a privy mark or a witch's mark, and they said, and so then I looked up witch's mark. What were they looking for? A little birthmark on people or whatever? And I never really. I guess I need to spend some more time looking, but there
Or
wasn't
was
any,
it whatever they found?
whatever they found. Oh,
Yeah.
here's a mark. So
Yeah.
they would call it that. Maybe that's it, because I'm like, there wasn't any like specific, but if they found like a little mole or birthmark, they go, oh, here's a mark. Okay, so the king, what's his name? King James even brought her and questioned her. And during the questioning, apparently she knew stuff about some conversations he had with his wife. So she was a seer, Agnes was. She knew things. So that didn't help her case. Is that like the devil or something? They dressed her up like the devil because they said she was the devil because she. So then but the king still, he wasn't really for putting her to death for being a witch. He wasn't convinced, even though she knew stuff, but he still wasn't totally convinced. But he changed his mind and charged her with witchcraft. And drawn 53 articles against her. And then she went to the stake. So a lot of times they would do the hanging thing and then put oh, was it King James who translated the Bible? That's a good question, Chris. You might be right. That might be just who it is. Anyway, but they didn't hang her first. So they didn't do that often. They usually hung them and then put them on the stake, but on the stakes. I'll tell you about it later.
Okay.
So yeah, it's awful. Anyway, so yeah, and that was her. But not much I could draw from except that she was a midwife. She was a healer, and apparently she kind of saw things too. And the whole situation with this again, and I think this came up in the witch trials as well. A 9-year-old accused several women of they were the ones who made the storm. So I thought that was interesting that they would take the word. So I don't know the whole story, but that's as much as I could gain from the little they had in regards to this. But I wanted to talk to her because of who she was, as far as she was a midwife. She helped women give birth. And he was gay. There you go, Chris. He just so
why, if they really thought she had powers, why not keep her alive and the other witches and say, can you help me? Or can you help our town? Or can you help our county? If you know the weather, can you help us change? Or,
yeah.
Why get rid of somebody?
Yeah.
Right? Utilize it. I just think it's...
from what I understand too, they were obsessed with witchcraft and the dark arts and all that at this time. And the king at first, he's like, she's just helping women have babies and healing people. Where are you drawing the conclusion that there's witchcraft involved? But apparently when she talked to him and she had some insight to some conversation that no one would have known, that kind of...
But again, use that.
Use that power. Use it. Yeah. But that's why I wanted to talk to her. I wanted to see someone at that time who was helping other women survive birthing and bringing in that healing piece. So that she was not only just a strong woman, but empathic as well, and understanding of helping with other women. And you can see why I chose this one too, because she was a midwife.
Yeah. Well,
we're having a baby here.
I know, right? She's saying something about. So she's saying something about blood, and she's saying something about. She made some kind of connection about blood that had to do with something like medical something, that it was like a medical breakthrough, for the time. And she's saying it was such a shock, or how could you ever know something like that? I feel like it has something to do with women's cycles and the way pregnancy is, something like that. But I feel like she was like, that was me. I told people about that, or I knew about that. I figured it out. And it was too much. It was like, how could you ever
know that?
How could you ever know that? Why, or how could you ever make that connection? I can't put my finger exactly on it, but it's something like that, because it feels like blood, but it feels like the
Like
something that's so natural now. We just know it now. It's
like
not
ovulation or something. She knew when a
yes,
woman would.
yes, something with pregnancy and
Oh, okay.
women and
Mhm.
cycles and something. But I feel like she's like, I did that. I figured that out, and they were blown away by it. It was like, how could you? But I feel like that was like that was in the background of all this or
Mhm.
something. But it
Yeah.
was like something that blew people's minds at the time. Oh, okay. So Paisley saying Kim said that I heard placental and mom blood.
Oh.
So there's something about this that it's like she
Mhm.
figured it out. She knew and it was too much for
Much.
at the time. It was like how would you ever know that? How could you ever have figured that out? So
Mm.
Some
anyway,
of the viewers have been saying that the men of the time and times threatened by women who would have known things. So maybe that's why they didn't keep them and utilize them, because maybe they were afraid of the woman figuring them out or being smarter than the king or whoever. Which,
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, yes.
I was saying, and of course we know they were.
Yes.
so, so so they were right to be afraid. But yeah.
I got balance, spirituality, and practicality. I think and I just checked with the pendulum, that she should have been more balanced. She may have been too overtly obvious that she was spiritual and knew things. Maybe if she had hidden it a bit, which
Mhm.
would have been the practicality part, to live in those times.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
certainly, in those times, you couldn't have a YouTube channel, right? So maybe she should have, just at the time, she could have played it a bit more reserved. But then again, she's not being her true self. So it's one of those wrestling things, right? Where you have to
Yeah.
figure out how much you can show before it's too much.
Mhm.
And it's just so outrageous.
Her her spirit reminds me of someone, but she would have not she wouldn't have changed
Right.
her journey or her choices, her breakthroughs in midwifery and herbs and all the things that she was doing. She wouldn't change it. Um, she knew that she's showing me 3 steps forward and 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. She understood that process. And she said, it's just unfortunate that people were so superstitious and weird about she's not using the
Mhm.
word weird, but um, just not being able to accept. But some were, she said, some were, and
And respected her.
and respected her.
Clearly respected her knowledge, her understanding.
And she said the king respected her.
Mm.
But she's telling me a little bit of a different story here with the king, which is very interesting. She's painting a whole different story. Well, not a whole different story. I mean, he literally had to, at the end, say, okay, I have to sign this thing. But he really picked her brain. He gained information from her, she said. And, but the times wouldn't have it. Like, it wouldn't be like, she said, if it was given any other time, she would have become what, I don't know what you would call this, but someone who the king would talk to and she would give advice to. I don't know what that's called.
A confidant or some.
Um,
I don't even know.
there's a special.
Term back then.
Yeah, there's a term. She's showing me a term, but I don't know it. But something like she would have been that person, but she was a woman and like an advisor of some sort. Yeah. But I like I like what Mountain Dancer said. She remained true to herself.
Mm-hmm.
She, yeah. The rest she doesn't want to talk about. She doesn't want to talk about any of the torture or anything like. She doesn't want to bring that up. But the main thing she wants to say is that she feels like it was worth it because progress was made.
And I think she's watching the progress still for women's rights and for spiritual people like ourselves, being able to be out there.
Mm-hmm.
In midwives and all these other things that are so natural, you know, and wonderful. I mean, midwifery is spectacular.
And isn't it interesting? I have this book here. Chris gave this book to me. It's called Witches, Midwives, and Nurses. You guys, we've had to deal with this forever. And here we are trying to help people and heal people, deliver babies. And it was, I just started reading this book. And so we may read on some more people that I find in here. But
yeah,
I find it so interesting.
She's also saying she saved or helped to save a lot of women and a lot of children at that time. She's saying she had excellent instincts, and it was her direct line to God is how she's putting it. She had a divine direction or direct connection to God, and that's what she attributed her fabulous instincts. She had amazing instincts that saved a lot of women and children at that time. Because it sounds like I don't know what area she was in, but it sounds like it was people were dying a lot, in childbirth, and women and children were dying a lot, and she was saving them, and it was due to her excellent instincts, which she attributes her
like. Why didn't the king just banish her to only do that? Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, what a fascinating lady.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you to her for
and an unsung hero, it sounds like, you know.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
I had to go searching for her. So that there, how many other women are out there like this? And we're like, wait, no, I want to talk about you. I want people to know you and what you did for us.
Yes.
Yeah. And these were the only pictures I could find.
I know.
So it was not when they had, So yeah, she is an unsung hero. She really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great pick, Debbie. Good one. So now we're going to go into something that's going to make us even more mad.
Yay, let's do this.
So we kind of talked, just those of you who don't know that we kind of talked about reading on events and how they kind of affect women either at that time or have affected women now, or what the ripple effect of an event is and and kind of following that energy. So I knew this wouldn't be a controversial subject at all, so I picked it. So I picked the event of the Dobbs V Jackson decision and what it has done, what it did right to the country, what the ripple effect of that decision, and also I felt, and I'm sure you guys did too, reading on this, you could feel the ripple effect on the other side, that the people that had been involved in just women's rights in general were sad for us, sad for the step backwards, wanting to support us, wanting to help us. You could every time I would read on this, when I was talking about the election or whatever, I could always feel that women on the other side they really were, like Debbie, you always say, linking arms. They really were. You can feel that every time at least for me, every time I read on, I could feel that. Um, and I think we all felt too in reading on the upcoming election, which is now, almost behind us, but that this was going to be a huge thing. That if people were not just going to be like, oh, well, I guess that right's gone. It wasn't like that at all. It was like a fire that was, you know, that wasn't going away. It was just burning brighter with every, with every day. So I'd really like to get what you guys get in what this decision did to women, young women, and the rise in we talk about the divine feminine, what it did to kind of push that along, kind of ignite that even further, more quickly. So yeah, what do you guys get?
First of all, I think that they were just relying on, we've been so complacent for a while. Like we have been just real complacent, just thinking things are going along as far as Roe versus Wade or, any of that type of thing. We've been quiet. We've been complacent. And I feel like when they made this decision, they didn't realize they were poking a bear with a pin, right?
Right.
We have voices now. We all have voices now, and we have more voice now than we did 10 years ago, than we did 5 years ago. Then we continue to step into our fullness and ourselves, and in stepping out of the constructs that have been placed on. We've been like Andrea said, we are deconstructing this narrative of us, and part of that is our voices. And you can see over time all the readings, Kim, Andrea, that we've done over the last couple of years we've been doing this. And you can see how people had one person had a voice, and whatever happened to them because they had that one little voice speaking up, right? And then go up to the 60s, and you can see the late 50s and the 60s where we really had that fight and our voice, and Roe versus Wade came in, and we got some rights, and we started really stepping into that, and we ran with that for maybe a decade, and then we went into complacency and started to get back into under the constructs. However, we were just sleeping. So now it's not like we've been awake. We were awake, but we went to sleep. Now we're really awake, right? You woke us, and so we are now going to be unstoppable. There is no silence here,
right.
And so I feel like that's one thing, that they poked the bear with that pin and messed with. Not only this is not about Republicans, Democrats. It's not about that. It's about equality all around. This is just the one thing that they poked, and it woke up all the rest of us, right? So equality has been an issue for centuries. However, now you woke up the white women too.
Right.
And so now together we can and we will bring equality.
And this decision rattled and woke up other countries too. It's
it's a global.
Yeah.
Yep. And you can see the fight, because then we have Iran, who
yes,
and that it's going to be bubbling up in all areas of the globe. Whew,
Right. And
it's a big one.
I wanted to read just I forgot that I had just put this. I just wanted to read this just to put it all in a box. But the US Supreme Court ruled in Roe v. Wade, a 1973 landmark decision, that a right to privacy within the scope of the 14th Amendment to the US Constitution included a woman's qualified right to terminate her pregnancy. On June 24th, 2022, the court issued a decision that by a 6-3 reverse vote that reversed the lower court rulings, a smaller majority of 5 justices joined the opinion overturning Roe and Casey. The majority held that abortion is not a constitutional right, as the Constitution does not mention it, and its substantive right was not deeply rooted, whatever that means, deeply rooted in the country's history, which it was, but oh well, and that individual states have the authority to regulate access to abortion. Chief Justice John Roberts agreed with the judgment upholding the Mississippi law, but did not join the majority in the opinion to overturn Roe v. Casey. Leading Republican politicians praised the decision, while Democrats and many international observers denounced it, as you were just saying, Andrea. Protests and counter-protests over the decision occurred in many U.S. cities and internationally, with polling indicating that 55 to 60% of the public disapproved of overturning Roe, which I think is even higher than that. That seems very low to me. And as we know, a lot of these polls are very conservatively swayed. I think it's more to 75 to 80%. The other thing I think was that became so clear with this is that this particular procedure, it's a medical procedure, and it rarely has to do with, this idea that women are running to get abortions for birth control. That's not what's happening.
No.
Most of the time, this procedure is used for women who have miscarriages, and they don't want them to go through the horror of that some of the women have now had to experience because of this, of having to wait to miscarry. It can be done in a safe way with your doctor, with your significant other, with your family, with your whoever. And that's usually what this is about. It's a medical procedure that helps women to not suffer. That's what it is. And so
they like to change the narrative into, oh, and we wait till 6 months after a baby's born. What is that?
I mean, it's nuts. It's nuts, and turning women into these like monsters.
Yeah,
Who, you know what I mean? Yeah. The way that Trump would be like, and they roll the baby up, and then it was so crazy. It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And just the idea they really don't, that women don't use this as a birth control method.
That's outrageous.
It's such a myth, and so dumb. And I think that this whole thing has brought that myth out into the light, and everyone can see it's a bunch of garbage. This is a medical procedure that helps women to not.
A council of women who decide this for, work with other women, not a Supreme Court that's more men than not, and not refer to a constitution that was written 200 years ago by 12 men or whatever. when America was founded. Like, things change, things progress and things change, and there should be a council of women, doctors and psychiatrists and whatever, who deal with this, and not anybody else's business.
Yeah.
And I think people who don't understand would say something so flippant like, oh, well, women will just use that for birth control. I mean, that's just an outrageous statement.
Exactly. I just heard, I don't know who I just heard somebody say that sometimes you have to fall back to leap, or you have to lean back to leap forward, something like that. So I
Oh,
feel like this was a it
Pushback.
was meant to wake us up. It
mm,
really was meant to be a big wake up call. But I also feel like other stuff is coming. So it's kind of like we had to get past this in some way,
yeah.
and realize what this is all about to go into the next phases we're going to be going
Prepare. Yeah.
into
Mhm.
for women.
Mm. I have cards to back you
Oh,
100%. Yeah. You always
I
do
love
that. And you always read my
I
card.
love that.
First of all, I just love that. I love my spirit team. They brought in this card. It's, gosh. Okay. So do I have to go like this? Does that work? No.
Turn
But
it.
anyways,
Okay.
no.
There you go.
Okay, there you
There
go.
you
It
Mhm.
says the season of the witch. I thought that was hilarious.
Oh my gosh.
So let's do it. Let's do it, everyone. And men can be witches too. So let's do this. But
Yeah.
anyways,
They're actually
oh, they are. She said they're wizards. They're not witches.
or
Men are
warlocks,
wizards
right?
or warlocks or whatever. So we are stepping into this is part of the shift. Okay.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's dimensional shift coming in here. So this is part of a big
Yeah.
shift. And so they're asking us to trust this process. And I love this too. It says be groovy or leave, man. So it's like get on the same link in here, and let's bring in this equality on all levels, because again this abortion thing is just a way that again, part of the narrative, they're trying to focus the emotions on abortion, and of course they're making it crazy. After it's born 6 months even, they do, and so um, I'm not sure what that was. Anyways, yeah, so I feel like they're trying to distract us. And the real issue is, again, ladies, gentlemen, all of us, is equality, and keeping people oppressed so that they can continue along in their little nationalist way.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so that's so remember that this is they're using this as a distraction. They know that this treatment is not a bad thing, but they're using it as a distraction because they know that they can create a story with it, a narrative with it that can be emotional and moral.
I remember when it happened, I felt like, to me, the collective vibe I was feeling was, if you get hit and the air gets knocked out of you, like, oh,
Mhm.
that's what it felt like. That's, to me, how I would kind of describe my feelings of everyone, was just like, oh, like, what?
Yeah,
This actually happened? And
yeah,
you want to do what? And,
Mhm.
oh, no, not again. We got to fight this again. And like, just that kind of, when you get
yeah.
the wind knocked out of you. That's what
Right.
I felt. That was the energy I felt.
And
And
it's so funny because I always forget, Andrea, that you're in Canada. I know I always forget that, but I do. But I think it's because everything that the US has gone through, and women are going through, it affects all women. It doesn't matter where you are. It affects you too. What's happening in Iran affects affects us. And we're our spirit is with them.
yeah.
We're connected.
We're yeah, we're all connected, exactly. And and their win is our win. And the same with this, they may not realize it now, but the fact that, what happened in this election happened, we all win because of that.
Mhm.
Um, and it, this I do think that we're going to be going into some amazing new strides and new territories, but it's going to be partly because of this, because they effed around and they found out.
Yeah.
And I would say
That's
the
right,
word
Kim.
Found out loudly.
there, but they did.
That
They
is
effed
right.
around, they
Yep.
found out, and that's what happened.
Mhm,
And maybe we also needed to be reminded that
mhm,
these things are not, they're not set in stone. As we started out with, and how these things always go full circle. We, it's a constant. It's an everyday thing that you have to reestablish what you want, and how you think things should be.
mhm.
You cannot, as uh, Abigail Adams, I think, says, you cannot take your eye off the ball,
Mhm.
right? You
That's
have to
right.
keep your eye on the
Can't
ball.
become complacent either until
Right.
it's all
Exactly.
eradicated, right?
No
That's
falling
not
back to sleep. That's not an
right.
option. Mm-mm.
Yeah. No.
Not an option to sleep right now.
So
Yes, and
this,
Melody and Women Afghanistan. I mean,
yeah,
there is some kind, does feel like a rising of some kind. And I think that it's part, like you said, Debbie, with your cards, it's part of the shift.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that decision, that the event you picked definitely was a wave in that motion, right? Like a slap in the face and then motivated and
Yes,
galvanized the movement, right? I don't think they were
absolutely.
expecting that. I
I
don't
don't
think
think
they
No.
so
saw
either.
the big event that it became across the world, like just shock, like what? And then
Right.
no.
Oh, and Andrea, I think that that was part of why the big red wave didn't happen, because
Absolutely.
we broke the bear. The
Absolutely.
yeah,
And if they're gonna do that, what are they gonna do next? Right? Like
yeah,
what's the next
right.
thing in fall? What
Yeah.
so
Right. Well, we know what the next thing was. It was going to be voting rights, right? Because they're already chipping away at those as we speak. And I think people have they've had enough of that.
enough.
And yeah, and so that is not happening, as they found out. As they found out. And it's so interesting because every reader, I think, saw this. But it was scary because it made no sense. Historically, this was not supposed to happen. And yet we could all see this is what was going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
And then it happened. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And amazing times we're living in. It feels like we're always teetering on the brink, but there's some, yeah, we're moving into a whole new phase. You can feel it, a whole new era.
Yes.
That we're going to be so happy to be part of. So, yeah.
And we get to, yeah, and I like that attitude, Kim, that we get to be a part of, and we get to help in changing that narrative, bringing our voices to this. So, yeah,
Strength.
strength,
Go,
and
go, go.
together we can, guys.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I
Well,
feel
thanks.
invigorated.
I do too.
Yeah, me too.
Let's go out and vote out some more Republicans. It feels so good.
That's right.
So now whose channel are we going to be on next week?
I believe it will be my channel.
Andrea's channel next week.
And we're kind of on baby watch, so that may
Oh yes, okay.
have an effect, but we'll hopefully we'll all see.
It
We'll
should
see
be
you all next
okay.
week.
We'll be okay. Yeah.
We'll be okay. All right.
Well, thank you, everybody. That was an awesome one. Go out there and keep fighting the fight. You know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Paisley wants Ella to her thoughts right now is that big boom, a bar fell and smashed her finger. So that's
Oh
that's
no.
what she's thinking about right
Are you
now.
okay?
Oh no, are you all right?
She has ice pack on it right now.
Ouchie.
Okay.
Oh,
Ice
I'm
is good.
sorry.
Yeah, so
Oh,
that was the big
goodness.
thing. And she didn't even make a sound. She just went up and got ice pack.
Oh my
She's
gosh.
a strong,
Right.
A strong
She's
young female.
That's
That's
right.
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 Leading the way for us
Leading
all.
the way for us.
Yeah. Oh,
Of course, if it happened to me, I'd be like,
I know, but yeah, we would all be like that.
but not this generation.
No?
Nope. This is
Awesome.
They just go get an ice pack.
Just gonna go get ice.
Good for you. Oh, sweetie, I'm sorry that happened. Well, thanks everybody. Thank you guys. Love you ladies. I will see you guys next week, and we'll see
Yes.
everybody then. Everybody have a
Blessings
good
and
week.
hugs. And Lincoln.
Yes, Lincoln.